This descent, having climbed up into the teeth of the wind, they're now being blown down the other side with the wind assisting them. So that's certainly aiding the speed of this little group at the moment, and some nasty curves coming up just ahead of them, so they have to keep an eye open. And a small moving group like this is certainly going to be easier to get round those sharp left-hand and right-hand bends than the chasing group behind, who must be going eyeballs out. But only 25 seconds, that's about where, in fact, 32, it's gone back again. So they're driving this one on. In fact, they're putting the group to Kipucci for some reason, so Claudio's got his name up there. It was Rominger that started it, and Rominger, number 11, the shortest number in it. But for some reason, Claudio's obviously gone and talked to our man who does the graphics and got his name on the board.
Well, Kipucci, if you watch him very closely, he's number 1 in the race, and you might say, why is he number 1? Normally, number 1 is the winner of the previous year. Whereas last year, Ralph Sorensen won Liège Bastogne Liège, and he was with Carrera Jeans. So this year, Ralph Sorensen has gone to another team. So the team holds the first place. So it means the Carrera boys will be always from 1 to 10.
That will teach me to read my script, because yes, he's 1 and Rominger's 11, so he should be first, shouldn't he? That's
exactly
right. And he's on the pack at the moment, though, tail end Charlie. He's a good descender, so somebody up the front must be putting on a cracking pace. Barry Robinson's pretty good downhill too, isn't he?
Kipucci is one of the best descenders in the peloton at the moment. Well, I'm not there anymore. But Rominger is also a very good descender. But the riders in this bunch now, they know that the group is coming up behind. If they let the group get back on, it means instead of being 11 riders in the front, they're going to be about 25 riders in the front. So it's in nobody's great interest that the group comes back. If they can stay away to the top of the Côte de Rosier, which is the next hill, they have a very good chance of going to the finish, because the group behind, which are 32 seconds at the moment, will get demoralised. They will have come back to 30 seconds, and after the Côte de Rosier, they will be at 1 minute. So for them, the race will be possibly over. So it's very important that they get to the top of the next hill with a small group.
And they're driving along still. Watching this little group now, and I know I've had pleasure of your company the last 24 hours or so, Stephen, you know, just what it feel like now being in the commentary position rather than out there riding? Do you feel, Christ, I wish I could be in there doing this now?
I'm just saying to myself, you know, I had to stop my career to have a Liège Bastogne Liège with that rain. Because I've ridden Liège Bastogne Liège 10 times, I think, and I only had 1 time with no rain or no snow. Normally we arrive in Liège on a Saturday night, it could be sunshine, it could be beautiful weather, and you can guarantee the next day it'll be very, very bad.
Well, and there's no truth to your team manager trying to talk you to coming back to ride the Tour de France.
Not at all.
There we are then, this little breakaway group here, just hovering ahead of the chasing pack containing Ardit Chamil. And looking at the little group there and Chamil's position on the... Yep, because the one he's got to watch out for is Furlan, who's got 50 points, and he's in this little group here, so Chamil's got to drive the thing along. He started out with 85 points this morning. This will be the last of the World Cup races until we have our little break for the Tour of Spain, the Tour of Italy, and the Tour de France, and we don't come back with the World Cup. Oh, sorry, my mistake, it's Amstel Gold next week. Let's get my script straight. Amstel Gold next week, then we have this break until we get into August, the 6th of August, for the San Sebastian. So not much more time left to score points and go into the Tour season as the World Cup leader. So Amstel Gold next week, that could suit Chamil, I suppose, but he's got to get up this little lot if he can make it. But undoubtedly must be tired after last week's performance in the Paris-Roubaix, which was not one of your most famous races, I think, was it, Stephen? Oh, you did win the amateur race, didn't you?
Exactly.
In 1984, was it all about?
1980 was. I won it in 18 as an amateur, and then I had reasonable success in it after that and as a professional, but I had an awful lot of falls back in 86, 87. I got 7 falls in the one Paris-Roubaix and still finished up in the first 20, but after that enough was enough.
And the Côte de Rosier coming up now.
Now we're coming to the hairpin back now, starting the Côte de Rosier. So if the lads can keep a reasonable gap going over the Côte de Rosier, it'll start looking very, very well for them now at the moment. It's just as you go over the top of Côte de Rosier, we get a very open space road with a crosswind. So anybody, like these guys are riding to stay in the front, but the guys riding behind must ride faster to catch them. So if there's any kind of a stall behind, then the gap just opens up immediately. The group seems to be working very well at the moment. Like Rominger has a teammate, Cabucci hasn't got anybody, unfortunately. Armstrong hasn't got anybody either. So it's a very, very good group for the moment, but it's the important riders have teammates with them.
Yeah, and certainly the Gavish are putting the pressure on now on this climb. They seem to decide that we'll go and have a crack at this particular one, and whistling now from the commissaires, moving everybody forward, so perhaps somebody's going to try and come across that gap. We rely to a large extent on a helicopter to pick up the pictures of the group coming up from behind, but of course with the trees here, not all easy for us to look down into the chasing group here. With De La Santa sitting on the back, number 14, just the right-hand side of him is Claudio Capucci, and the pressure on at the front. They're pulling the neutral service car forward, so they must have dropped it in, and that 32-second gap was there, which says that somebody may well be coming up. This, despite the pressure on the front, it must be tantalising on a climb this to be able to see it and just not cross that gap.
That's it. It's but in one way it's kind of half normal, because there's if you count, there are 5 teams present in the front, and there's 25 teams in the race. So and big teams are missing, like the World Perfects, the GBs who are on a home territory here, Nova Mai, who are with the Wolf, who won here a few years ago, who wants to win here again, Bunyo. There are a lot of good material missing from this break. So I'm sure if the lads know if they don't get this break down, or at least try and get one of their riders into it, they'll be having a very difficult half hour after the race.
So, of the 188 riders in the race at the moment, looking at the way the teams are coming up and the individual riders, there are 50 riding today from Italy, there are 29 from France, 27 from Belgium, 17 from Spain, 12 from Holland, 9 from Germany, 8 Swiss, 5 Russians, believe it or not, that's quite tremendous, 4 from America, and so on right the way down here, and absent are the Irish, unfortunately.
I think actually for must be the first time in the last 15, 16 years there has not been a rider from either Ireland or England.
Yep.
Because Sean Kelly is actually starting his 16th or 17th season, and every year he would have ridden Liège Bastogne Liège. I rode it already 10 or 11 times, so it must be the first time in at least 15 years that there hasn't been an English-speaking rider from our side of the water riding Liège Bastogne Liège.
Well, while looking down the helicopter here, Stephen, do you see anybody coming on from Ireland that can make it in the pro ranks, some of the young talent?
Unfortunately, at the moment, the Irish cycling has not really benefited from, I don't think, from what myself and Sean have done over the years. But like I suppose it's possibly the economic situation has not helped things, because young lads now are finishing school up early, looking for jobs, not finding jobs, and becoming practically professionals at 16, 17 years of age, wanting to become professional bike riders. But unfortunately, not everybody who stops work and stops school at 16 years of age becomes a professional. So unfortunately, it's I don't see anybody coming through. There's some good talent, but it comes and goes, unfortunately.
And the other Irishman, of course, we mustn't forget is Martin Early, who's now riding for Rally on the mountain bike scene, winner of a stage in the Tour de France and the Tour of Italy. And of course, Peter Crinium was I suppose the chap together with Shea Elliott that founded the great tradition in Irish cyclists coming across and riding on this side of the water. But now the Italians' dominance, and that means more money for sponsorship, and all these big teams bankrolled by large consortiums, either together, Maffei Class, consortium of Italian and Spanish sponsors, GBMG, again a consortium of Belgian sponsor together with an Italian sponsor. So the money there is coming from Italy to a large extent, and of course still a large amount of money being spent by the Spaniards, which, so for young riders there is a chance of earning a few bob, whereas the further north you go, the more difficult it seems to become, and even Belgium's been lamenting the fact they've had difficulty fielding full pro teams.
Well, they will, of course, the main factor being that the television has been cut down a lot. Italy has become very good in the last 2 years, only because if you remember 4 years ago there was a crisis in Italy, they couldn't find any riders. Bunny was doing well today and then gone tomorrow. And then all of a sudden there's a crisis in Italy, whereas now we have, until this very day, we have 58 wins for Italy since the start of the year. So automatically sponsors come back. And
as far as the Americans are concerned, Motorola, big American sponsor, Word Perfect, big American sponsor. They've seen the chance of linking together their worldwide organisations through television sponsorship, and Motorola spending their money on mainly English-speaking riders, although they have recruited Raul Alcala this year, who's already won the Tour of Mexico for them, to bolster up their tour team. And they've got so many decent riders in there. It's good to see they've got Armstrong away today, because last week we had people like Frankie Andrew and Sean Yates and Kay Hunter-Mark all doing good rides in the Paris-Roubaix. Near Argentan is beginning to put some pressure on the front. He's recognised the danger, hasn't he?
Moreno Argentina's ridden maybe another 10, 12 Liège Bastogne Lieges. So he's always been up there in the placings also. But he's 33 years of age, possibly having in his last season as a professional. He wanted to ride with this team this year to help Berzin and Furlong to help them get to further afield. And you can see by what I mean, he's actually riding in the front now, making tempo. So he senses the danger possibly coming from behind. He knows that keeping this group together until we get over this next hill, there's a good chance of staying away to the end. Whereas if people start sitting back a little bit, the group comes closer from behind and maybe the race is finished for them.
He must have also had a new lease of life last year when he took on the pink jersey for the first time in the Tour of Italy and wore it for about 12 days. I mean, it was quite a performance when he just even got it. He said that was enough, and then he kept it all those days. So he never looked upon himself as being a Tour rider, so perhaps one can say if he'd concentrated in that area, he might have done even better still. But as a single-day classic man, almost without comparison in recent years. So there he is on the front, driving this thing along, and was thinking, I think of going into team management at some point in time, but he's very much a rider, coach, captain at the moment.
Well, I think this is where the last 2 or 3 years Argentina has not had great success because he was looking to go into too many things. Whereas in the last 2 years now he says, the hell with all the rest of it. I'm a bike rider until the end of my days riding my bike. So I'm going to concentrate only on riding my bike. He had a shop in Rome, I think it was a clothes shop. He had something in Monte Carlo, where he gave everything up and went back to cycling full time.
Yep.
I made the same mistake myself when I won the World Championships. And it was only when I was in '91 when I decided to give everything I had back to cycling again. I started to come around to my old form again. So I think it's a mistake that a lot of top riders make when they get to around the age of 30 years of age, because we feel, well, the end is near and you have to prepare yourself, but it takes a lot of energy away from you that you might need for getting results.
And he certainly moved out of Monte Carlo, where he lived with Tony Rominger. Well, not with him, but they were both based down in Monte Carlo. Moved back up near to his hometown now. And Argentin driving this one. And that certainly is more than 30 seconds. That has gone something, it's got to be close on a minute now to that chasing group at the back. That's a formidable gap that's opened up. It has to be something, I'm sure, close on a minute.
And even still, when it's only a very, very small group, it's only another handful of riders. I think I see Bunyo in there. You see his yellow jersey of Bunyo in there as well. Chmil is in there also. It's difficult to see now from the helicopter now. Earlier on we were saying we were lacking helicopter shots, where now we have them, we can't see the riders.
Well, Chmil certainly is in there, and the gap, they showed it as 55 seconds, so my minute guess wasn't that far out. And looking Lotto, yes, they've got the red and black cart there. Jean-Luc Van der
That's for
Broek.
Chmil,
And just for Chmil, yes, they moved him up there as well. And is that Giotto again? Because
no, it's not Giotto.
No,
it's not.
Too chunky for him, isn't it?
It's not even Bunyo, I don't think. Because Bunyo doesn't go from side to side like that.
Here we are. We've got a list to see who it is now at the moment.
It looks like Saligari maybe. This group must have at least 1 minute on the trailing group, because you see the team cars are all in there now, whereas team cars are only allowed in when there's a minute. There's a very small group coming on again, yeah. But from the main bunch, they must have 1 minute.
Yeah, and those 8 men, 2, 4, 6, 7 minutes it is. So it is down to petty numbers now. Lotto got a couple of riders up there. They're rather pleased with that one, and
there's also a TVM rider in there as well, Banesto.
And also Telecom managed to get a man into that little lot as well. So there's a good mixture of riders back down there at the moment.
Yeah, there might be class rider coming back to the back there. I didn't see who it was.
They pulled the team cars over, so it looks like they think they may regroup. Now, is that going to be an advantage or disadvantage? We've got 7 here and something like about 8 or 9 up the front. When this like come up, that's going to make a much bigger second group.
It'll make a much bigger second group, and it may, like their aim is to come back to the front group, because as I said earlier on, you only have 5 teams represented in the front, and 5 and 25 is 20, so you only have 20 teams not in for the dessert. You know what I mean? And if those riders don't do the best they can to get a rider into the front group, after the race they'll be getting told off by their director sportif.
Well, there's a nice cartoon in L'Equipe, the sporting magazine, sporting newspaper in France, where they had just before the Paris-Roubaix a cobbled cartoon of one rider standing in front of it, and the chap saying, "This is the Tour of Flanders," because that was just the flat cobbles, and then he pointed where the cobbles go straight up at a wall and says, "This is the Paris-Roubaix." That was a wall. Well, as far as this one is concerned, it certainly goes up as well. It's not badly cobbled, but the ups and downs taxing the strength of these riders, and certainly has thinned them down, so we can virtually say, I suppose, that of this 17 or 18 man group here trying to chase down our leaders, that this is going to be the all over and done with for anybody else further back down the line. And one thing about the way it crisscrosses backwards and forwards, I was very interested to see that it's probably easy to nip back to the changing rooms, because at one point we'd done 3 big climbs and we'd only travelled along the particular main road at the bottom some 7 kilometres, where we'd actually done 35 kilometres up into the mountains and back down again. So I'm sure there's some chaps at the back taking a shortcut into Liège already. And that chases on down the other side as the riders heading through the woods yet again, crisscrossing this delightful countryside. Seen of much battles, of course, in the Second World War, and there's tanks, museums dotted around here likewise, but they've got no time to take in the scenery or to study war tactics. It's all about driving this one forward. And here they go on down, and you can see in the far distance that top of the climb. That's the sort of height they've been up, and they're right down the bottom, right alongside the river, dropping down something like about 350, 400 metres before they turn back again. Some 68 kilometres yet to go. A rather funny run in toward the town. We'll take you through that later on as they come in towards Liège. But as they drop down off the top of the mountain now towards the next climb coming up, we're going to take a short break. So don't go away, come back for more action in just a couple of minutes.
If you've ever tried to give up smoking, you know just how difficult it can be. How life can feel dull and meaningless. But there is help. Nicorette nicotine gum helps you beat the craving. Nicorette helps you through the hard times.
Thai, Thailand. Discover the treasures of a kingdom.
Eurosport Live.
Lance Armstrong tracking after Tony Rominger. These two riders here, part of that front group of the descent, and chasing something like about 18 men behind them, trying to regroup and put the pressure on.
Rominger actually is having gone to see a man about a dog, in case any of you are wondering what he's trying to do.
And thankfully all are at the moment, nature taking its course.
So what happens now, we just see, is the lads know that, well, it's been very, very cold today, so the lads don't sweat a lot, so it means they have not been able to urinate a lot, and don't lose a lot of water by sweat as they would normally do when it is very warm. And they know that now the final phase of the race is going to start now with the next couple of climbs. So the only chance they have now to urinate will be now. Otherwise the race will be on again and they have no time to do it. So here's Armstrong looking for something now in his shorts.
Turn Grandma's face to the wall, please. I mean,
this is bike racing, Dave. This is bike racing.
I thought I'd get a certificate X for this, but if we're not careful. Well, that's what it's all about. I mean, they're going to be riding in the saddle. Let's see, what was the time last year that was the winner's time? There was 7 hours, 14 minutes and 8 seconds was the time last year that Sorensen took to win the race. So they're getting something like 7 hours in the saddle for these riders, and so we expect them having to do the things which come naturally to anybody, but they're all settling back down again. Also a sign surely that chasing group are well and truly back. Must be well over a minute now.
Well, they are, of course, but there still could be another group coming onto this, because there's a long way to go. I see Argentina riding a lot in the front, but one man riding in the front is not enough to go to the finish. We still have 60 odd kilometres now to the finish, so it's a bit far. And we have Berzin on the front now at the moment, who is he's definitely on a good ride today.
Nice to see him. These Russians. Stephen, earlier on, if you missed the part of the program, he was talking about the way in which riders don't want to turn pro, they want the hurt of riding for money, and why we aren't getting so many chaps coming through that are prepared to take the pressure. Well, the East Europeans are, and I think we're going to see a lot of the talent coming out of East Europe. We've seen it already with people like Olaf Ludwig that came over late in their careers to ride in the Western Hemisphere, but now with the Iron Curtain down, I'm sure we're going to see a lot more riders coming across who are young riders being nurtured by their various nations. And I mentioned last week that Chmil was from Moldavia. In fact, he is a Russian, but he rides for a Moldavian club, and therefore when he went to the World Championship, he decided to ride for Moldavia rather than for Russia, and he was the only Moldavian rider, so he was the first Moldavian clubman to win the Paris-Roubaix last week. And there was some concern about the fact that, well, not concern, coming about the fact that when Museo got within 6 seconds, that Chmil kept on going. And evidently there's no love lost between the two of them, because Chmil was propositioned slightly to help Museo in the World Championships, because they both rode for GBMG. And Chmil is reputed to have said, Moldavia is not part of Belgium, and he rode for himself.
Well, you must admit also, like, Chmil has had a very, very good career over the last few years, but he's also ridden so much for guys like Museo, like Cipollini. He's always ridden for a team leader. Whereas the World Championships last year was the first time in his whole career he had a chance to ride for himself, for his own team, which meant riding for himself. So it paid off. It gave him a lot of confidence. It helped him change teams last year, going to Lotto from GB last year. And I think it's already having shown its fruit. It's actually, he had a very, very good classic season so far. And we saw in Paris-Roubaix how strong he was. He didn't only win it, but he actually rode like for the last 60-odd kilometres in the front alone, holding off everybody from behind. So that says a lot for itself.
There's your little ping-pong ball, coloured red, going up and down towards the finish at Arles. And we said before, we go through Liège and out the other side. It's a bit of a mucky run-in to begin with, then it gets a bit hilly towards the back end. So make the most of this lovely countryside you're seeing now before we begin to get in towards the suburbs. So the Scribble riders seem to have knuckled down to the moment. And
we're very lucky actually with the weather, because as you can see from the helicopter, you cannot see too much of the sun, but it is a very, very blue sky at the moment, which is very, very rare for Belgium. But at the same time, it's only about 9 or 10 degrees outside, so this is the reason why you see the riders still have arm warmers on and some hats under the crash helmet. There's Ronan Pansek now we now see on the screen in the second group.
That's Chmil.
Chmil.
Yeah.
Museo.
So he's got to help him now, haven't they? Well, they like the fact that Moldavia is not a suburb, not part of Belgium or not. They're having to go, aren't they?
Francesco Casagrande.
Oh, that was the fellow we spotted, wasn't it, for the top? Yeah.
107 is Maximo Chandri.
Yes, because he's in the new colours now, isn't he, with the GBMG?
Yeah,
and
Eli.
Yeah, so Chandri, Eli and Museo, all GBMG. So it's GBMG versus Guvis Belan at the moment.
It is, but the difference is the other guys on the front.
By about a good minute too.
Yeah.
And I've heard all sorts of rumours, in fact, that Chandri and Museo aren't seeing eye to eye. One can't always believe press comment in these matters, but there seems to be some hanging on about who's going to sign contracts for next year and what have you. So perhaps the drafting of riders into a team doesn't always produce the results that the manager wants. And we were talking last night, Stephen, how the career team always seem to be a jolly good band of riders, don't they? The sort of the atmosphere there seems to be so good.
Well, as we all know, I've gone through a couple of teams over the last few years. As I was saying, I've gone through a couple of teams over the last couple of years, and Carrera was being my last team. Even when I wasn't with them, I was able to always keep in contact with the lads, and even now when I'm finished with Carrera, I still have very, very good contact. Even though they don't get super big names in the team, definitely in the last couple of years, they always have very good ambience in the team, so it's very, very good for everybody. Now we have another helicopter shot now, and we're coming down to Côte de Force at 213 kilometers from the start, which leaves about 50-odd kilometers now to the end, where we have our second feeding station. So this is possibly the last of the good moments for some of these riders, because we all know we still have 2 or 3 more announced climbs, because there are a lot more climbs on the road, but we only have 2 more Grand Prix of the Mountains. So these riders now are having a little bit of a break now before filling up the pockets with some food. At this stage in the race, after 200 and odd kilometers, the riders will have not so much like bread rolls and classic stuff. They will have a lot of food which is more or less for drink. They will have, as we call it, extra champ, which is very, very highly concentrated with sugar, and it helps them kind of give them a little bit of a boost, because if they start eating bread rolls and cake and everything else, it makes their stomach very, very heavy. And from now on to the end, they don't want to be feel the stomach bloated up or anything else. What they want is liquid. So they have a lot of stuff on the market now to do this.
Well, there we are, 62 kilometres to go for these riders after the feed, and still no sign of that group coming up.
The group now is getting very strong out there, possibly all is kind of not so much resting, but they're all out of taking a little bit of grub now from the feeding station. So they know that the next climb comes up in about 5 kilometers, which will be then Côte de l'Ours, which is a climb which goes on for about 4 kilometers, about 2 kilometers, a little bit steep, but it goes up on a gear of about 41, 16, 17, depending on who you are.
And how fit you are, I suppose.
Exactly. Roaming gear, for example, he will more than likely be using a big gear, because he goes up, normally he was in the big gear, and like Capucci, but the riders like Argentine and like Brezina, they will all be riding a slightly lesser gear than the other guys.
And what they're riding for? Well, today the top prize, 432,000 Belgian francs, and work that out at 50 francs to the pound, if you like. So I suppose that's something like about £10,000, or just under that for the top rider. And riders will get prizes down to 25th place, so there's still a lot at stake as far as those we haven't seen on our screen is concerned. And a special mountain prize too as well, of 1,400 Belgian francs as well. That's confirmation of the rundown of the positions in the World Cup. We talked about them earlier on, and so Chamil desperately trying to stay in contention, but the gap is getting longer all the time between the leading group, which contains 3 Gewis Balan riders, and the chasing group, which contains 3 GBMG. So Chamil isn't going to want for some pretty strong help, but this lot at the front seem like they're working very well indeed together.
So we can see that the MAPI class riders and also the GBS Balan riders, they're riding very much so for their leaders, because the likes of Armstrong, the likes of Capucci, they've not asked them to ride so much for the moment. They're leaving them content to have them sitting on the back, and the other guys are getting on with the job, hoping to get as far as possible into the finish with Rominger, giving Rominger, of course, the best chance of winning. They're putting all their cards on the 2 riders.
And here the chasing group, we're having a look, going back to see what was going on there. And again, the interference likely, they won't actually sort of physically interfere, but certainly that chasing group at the moment, Kengialta for Gewis Balan is nicely played. That's your rundown on that chasing group at the moment. And 45, their teammate has got 3 men up in the lead as well right now. So a lot of work really has to be done by GBMG. They're the big red blob you see in the centre with GB inside it. GB is a supermarket in Belgium. MG is a clothing company for children from Italy, and their store rider Pensac drifting off the front. Mercaton Union, you know here.
Yeah, it's getting very near to the end now. So the riders know that if they want to have any chance of getting into the finish, get into the front group, they must get the group back before they come to Côte de la Redoute, which is in about another 20 odd kilometers. So they know that this is the last do or die effort. If they can get back to the group, they have a chance of being in the front for the win. If they don't get back, well then it's the race is over for them.
Well, here we are then, Tangen Stumo, and so that's 60 kilometres to go. In fact, the La Redoute, 37, so we've got about just, some 20 odd kilometres toward the top of that climb. We're going at it a slightly different route as well this time. No, actually, the next climb I thought it's slightly different, isn't it? But La Redoute, again, a one which has got a monument up the top, and we shall be seeing that one as well, and another monument later too of Stanockers. The place is littered with monuments round here, both to battles and to bike riders, and is seeing the world's best here, and they're all looking very, very comfortable indeed. Undoubtedly the Gewis Balan team here must be very pleased with their tactics. Looks to be like riding on these titanium bicycles at the moment. You can see the sort of matte grey finish of them. And Claudio Chiappucci also working well with this little group. So you've got an extra mouth to feed, so he must be happy with this, because the prize is fairly substantial today.
Definitely, but I'm sure Chiappucci's not riding for the money, he's only riding for the pleasure. But I think having 3 of the GBS Ballon riders in this group could actually be a handicap in one way, because the other riders know that this team will be the strongest representation in the group, and maybe towards the end, for example, Chiappucci or Armstrong, they might just say, well, okay, I have nobody in the group, so I'm going to let the GBS riders drive on the front.
Well, GBS certainly had a fine when they got young Burzen, only second-year professional to join them, age 23 years of age at the moment. He had a second overall in Training Adriatico early on this year, second in the Mediterranean Tour as well, and third in the Sicilian week. So he's already shown himself in good form at the start of this year, and he thinks actually that he could do well in stage races. So look forward to seeing him in the Tours later on, because that lad's got a lot of talent at the moment. Only turned pro last year for Mecca, so he's been under the wing of Moreno Argentan, and he finished 90th in the Tour of Italy last year, which must have been a baptism of fire for him. And he lives near Milan, a little town called Broni, some 5 kilometres from Bobrick, so the Italians having the Russians moving amongst them. Here at the back, that's Chamil. Take a drink, and this is where we dive under the river bridge, isn't it? Across that, sorry, under the railway line and across the river bridge, which is all cobbled in the canoes route earlier on today, weren't
Exactly. That's very good for the tourists. So now
they were busily drowning a boat when we saw them.
Exactly, but the riders will not see that, unfortunately. There's a lot of about a kilometre now of flat now before we get now to the third last climb of the day, which is Cota della Rosa. It lasts about 4 kilometres long. And not very steep, but not all the steep climbs have been marked on Liège Bastogne Liège. We have 12 principal climbs down on the programme, but if you add in all the small little climbs, all the small little surprises that you have on the stage today, on the race today, you have much more than 12 climbs.
And these riders know exactly what lies ahead of them, and they haven't missed a beat so far since that selection came on the big climb up out of the town at Stavolo, activated very much by that man there.
Argentina's doing an awful lot of work today in the group. I think he must have so much confidence in his teammates. Like, you see Rominger just sitting there behind him, just happy to stay there. Like, he's not getting any shelter at all from Argentina.
He seems to roll quite a big gear, Argentina. Is he one of the big gear boys?
Argentina's the kind of a guy, he just doesn't move on the bike, just turns gears around. He's just so strong. He does an awful lot of training in the mountains, using like sitting down in a gear in a hill and putting on a big ring and maybe a 15 or a 14, just sitting down and doing intervals in it. It's a very, very good method which Dr. Ferrari has. Ferrari looks after Rominger, sometimes the Bugno, Argentine, and a lot of Italian riders, and he gives them out certain training programs. But I wouldn't advise anybody looking at the television today to say, well, Argentina does it, I can do it, because they could do you more harm than good sometimes. Argentina's had a lot of trouble with attendance actually over the last few years, and who knows, maybe it can be coming from that also.
That's often the problem with young riders. The gap now at 1 minute and 8 seconds back to the Chamil group, that they see these big gears being pushed by the top men and the big cranks being rolled around and think, I can do that, but you're going to do it for a short period of time. And certainly I've seen some time trialists rolling around them. They're also following up like Albrie, because he rides things like 110-inch gears and things like that. It's amazing, but that's after years of experience. If you're 30-odd years of age and you know yourself well, then you can start pushing the big gears. For a young lad, you can soon do so, all sorts of trouble.
You must take into consideration that these guys have done about 20,000 miles a year, and Argentina has done 14 years as a professional, or 13 years as a professional, so if you add it up, you get an awful lot of miles. So if Argentina is doing it after so many thousand miles of training and racing, you don't just kind of come out of high school and start using the same methods.
I think what people could copy though and watch very much is the tactics of these races and how close they ride together, and the tactics done by the teams. Fascinating. I went yesterday, had a look at a first part of a film show that was being shown in London, and how there the old riders used to ride with great gaps between them. They didn't sit as close as we're seeing now there. Chamil wondering what he's got to do to try and get back up to that leading group. At 1 minute and 6 seconds, I think that it's probably too much as far as they're concerned. But nevertheless, we keep our fingers crossed for him to stay with this little group. He'll still get himself some useful points in the World Cup, and here they are tackling this climb.
Well, they all know that there's still 40 kilometres to go, so gets a handy rough on the edge, that long way to the finish. So I think in front, they're looking at each other because with there being 3 GWS riders and then there being 2 MAPI class riders, someone's at one stage or another, someone is going to start kind of getting suspect and say, well, why should I ride and him not ride? And all of a sudden then there's lack of communication in the group and the speed goes down, and at this moment it's very, very good, very, very easy for a group to come back from behind.
And Argentin, having done his stint at the front, going up to the climb now, finding a bit of difficulty hanging on at the back. He's just drifted off the pace a little bit. That was a good stunt as far as he's concerned to get the whip out on this little climb now, letting his mounting go. So it looks like Berzin moving forward and Rominger as well. And Armstrong always doing the right thing on the climb, just moving up round about 3rd from the front, keeping an eye on what's happening, and Kierpucci too. So the tactics here of these riders to drive this thing along without running out of steam, very plain for you all to see here. Cracking race. We've had some good races on Eurosport this year, right the way through since we've been covering the Milan-San Remo, the Tour of Flanders, the Paris-Roubaix. This one today, we've got the Flèche Wallonne during the week on Wednesday, and then next week the Amstel Gold. And then as we move into the Vuelta, the Tour of Spain, every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, special program late in the evening about the race and extended news during the week as well. So cycling brought to you very simply by Eurosport right across the whole of Europe. Something like 44 million homes now can watch Eurosport, and cycling here so international now at the moment, but dominated by the Italians. And I see the Italian flag there in the background, absolutely on key, and there must be a number of Italians around about the place who are overjoyed with the performance of their riders. And the Tifosi are always very noisy indeed when it comes to cheering on their competitors, whether it's on bikes or in motor cars or what have you. Here are 1:17 then, the gap is opening up all the time here on this little group. And is that the end of the day?
I never say never, you know. I think it's like anything can happen now, because we already see signs of fatigue from Argentina, who has done a bit of a stint on the front of the group, and now he's gone to the back. So it's, you know, Argentina cannot last very much more, I think, at this rate. But then a couple of years ago I said the very same thing about Argentina, and he came back and beat me in the sprint. So Argentina, like I said before, he's one of the cages riders that I've come across as regards classics. But I think that this group, I think, soon will start falling apart, because they, when the GWS riders stop riding, who's going to ride then? And everybody knows that Rominger is very strong, and Kierpucci is going to be afraid that Berzin is going to go away, and I think it's going to start getting a little messy now in the next couple of minutes.
Well, Ferlin, on your screen you saw his performances in the LIEGE Bastogne Liege in the past, 8th and 11th. What a change from last week with the mud, which was on our screens throughout all the Paris-Roubaix. Now the sun has come out to warm the backs of these. This is the chasing group of riders that you can see here. Ronald Pansix in the group. Ellis in there, Saligaris, Chandri, Chamil and Museo. So this is the little group here, and there's a rundown. I just started to read out who was in this little group for you, and there they are. And Bolt's the rider for Telecom in the pink coloured jersey.
As you can see, the group now is they're actually not bet, but there's less, there's not so much communication there between the riders, and they're not as determined as they were, as you saw them earlier on. We saw the lot of riders riding in the front. They've kind of possibly thrown the towel in and said, well, okay, there's no point in trying to come back because we cannot go back. Because normally, in normal circumstances, the Lotto rider should have been riding in the front to try to get Museo across, because there's 6-7 riders in the front and no Lotto. So it was with GB being one of the main sponsors here, and the finish here is actually in front of the big GB store.
The whip is out.
And having no GB in the front, it's been it's bad.
Yep, there we are then. And the climb, the Côte de Loche, up in front of the Loche climb here, it is some 282 meters high, this climb, so it's a significant one. They've been over the highest climb so far. One just after La Roche, must be named after Steam. Yes, we thought...
As you can see, Argentina is gone. He's an incredible guy. Before he gets dropped, we saw him riding in the front. He must have felt that his time was up, so he gave it everything he had to help the group gain time on the following group, and then gone into this last hill, then it's called a day, because he's nothing else left. But that's the image of a real teammate. Like, wasn't kind of saying, well, if I kind of hang in and I don't ride in the front, I can finish maybe. Argentine said to himself, well, if I hang on the back and finish 12th or 15th, it doesn't help the team. Whereas if my teammates can win, if I give it a good urge now in the front and open the gap, or help open the gap, or help keep it open, and my teammate can win, well, at least I've contributed a lot to the race and also to the win.
Argentin will have company when he drops back into that group behind, because certainly there's another one from Guis Bellan. Tengialta is in that little group as well, so they've done extremely well, the Guis Bellan, and that is a little rundown on the leading riders. So just two of the Guis Bellan riders now, and both of them, so De Los Santos at the back, and that's Furlan just on the left-hand side of him, he's looking up the road there.
When you have Furlong and Berzin in front in the same group, who's going to be the leader? That's the problem now. That's the question they're all going to ask. Am I riding for Berzin, or is Berzin riding for Furlong, or should Furlong ride for Berzin? And who has the right to win?
Yeah, I saw the team car come out and have a chat with Furlan before Argentin dropped off the back. So there's obviously, because the difficulty for the young rider like Berzin, who could be flying right now if he gets instructions to ride for Furlan, because Furlan being second in the World Cup with 50 points and the leader down the back, so he might get that sort of instruction even though he feels he might be stronger than Furlan.
Well, this is possible also, but priority is publicity in a way. It happened to me when I started professional, and there was Giovanni Bernardo was in my team, and I came to the end of Grand Prix de Monaco, and the team car came up and I was riding, I was really going very good. The team car came up and said, Stephen, you must finish second. I said, but no, I'm going to win. He said, no, Bernardo must win because nobody knows Roach. So the thing could be the same now, whereas Furlong being very, very strong and being the man of the early season, he's much better known than Berzin. I feel that maybe not only from a commercial point of view, but also like if you put Berzin up on a pedestal now and let him win races in front of the team leaders, I think it must be like, even if it's not a 50-50 chance, it must be like 51 for Furlong and 49 for Berzin.
Didn't the same thing happen with you in the Tour with Vincenti, your teammate there, when the Italians weren't very happy?
They're all bad moments there, Dave. I'd prefer to forget about all those moments. But that was it.
I keep reminding you.
What happened was Vicentini thought he was we had 50. I thought we had 50-50, but Vicentini thought otherwise. So when I realised that he was thinking differently, then I changed my tactics.
And Henny Kuiper having a chat with Armstrong. So certainly Paul Sherman's tapping the side nose and saying that Lance was in good form this morning was a useful tip, and Henny Kuiper, himself an ex-Olympic and professional champion, giving a few words of wisdom to the young man here about what he should do. He looks remarkably strong.
Definitely going very well. You can see that the gear is turning compared to the other riders. He was sitting back. When you're back at the car like that, you're about 15, 20 metres behind the group. As we saw, he had one hand in his pocket, one hand on the bars. When he finished talking to Kuiper, he accelerated on a very small gear, came woof, back into the back of the group again. Yeah. So there's a pure sign he's definitely going well. And also it's very lucky for him that he has the Malpace and the other guys with him, because it means that he hasn't got to ride too much and he can keep things free. As we have somebody going out the front here, but from the helicopter we cannot really make out who it is.
Because Armstrong in the World Championships took off over the top that last climb and then descended very well indeed. We've got last climb but one. Some distance to the finish, something like 20 kilometres to go, and then there's a very nasty run into the finish here, which has got quite a conk about it. So there's some very good hill climbers in there, so it isn't all going to be down to Armstrong finding his way to the finish and just using his strength on the climbs, because all Rominger good climber, Chiappucci King of the Mountains and the Tour de France good climbers, and the Furlan here, a great all-rounder over the years. He really has come good. Again, one of the Ariostea riders that, since they come out of Ariostea, they popped up all over the place, haven't they?
But Ariostea was a team directed by Giancarlo Ferretti, who was an ex-rider himself, a very good Italian rider back in the old days, who believes so much in training. And every second week, every time you haven't got an international race on, he brings them away on training camps. So it means the lads are getting used to one another. They're like living like a family, living together all the time. They race, they train, everything is done in family. In one way, it's very difficult because you're away from home all the time. Even when you must be away for racing. But on the other hand, it creates an incredible atmosphere in the team, and it kind of makes you ride above yourself sometimes.
I rather detected then, Stephen, that there was some concern amongst the team for Rominger that the hand was sort of going softly or something. I can't quite make out what it is, because sure they've all got to keep driving this thing along. So we'll have to wait and see what happens later on as to whether Rominger will persist or go on the front or just ease back a bit. Claudio Chiappucci getting a few words of wisdom. We've seen plenty of team tactics being sorted out here. There's still a long way to go, and a couple of climbs yet ahead of these riders. So if they're all equal on the legs at the moment, we might have the final rundown being the effective one. But
well, Chiappucci, like, is probably...
Can you lip read the Italian?
Well, you can, like Chiappucci always says, you know, he, Guitarelli will be giving the information to Chiappucci, telling him who's behind and how different it is. He'll be saying to him, well, the group has gone from behind, don't count on them. The race now is with the guys you have in front here. Sonta looks good, and Rominger looks good. Just telling Chiappucci what he already knows, really. But in one way, it's a kind of a moral lift for Chiappucci. He goes back and talks to the director, and it looks good and it feels good. It makes him, gives him in a way a sense that he has another teammate with him in the front group. So it's very, very good for the morale. And also the team director likes it also because it gives him a chance to talk to somebody. Because when the riders are riding along in the bunch, the directors are very far behind. They never have time to talk to any rider. So when he can talk to his own rider, especially when he's in a break towards the finish, it's always very good.
And this group still stringing along here, the gap opening up progressively all the way, but they're not working too well at the moment. The gap's opening up, and Armstrong closing that one down.
Well, they all know that Lara Dut is now not the final decider, but it's a very, very steep hill. It's not like we're talking about Rominger being a good climber for Tour de France, Chiappucci being a good climber for Tour de France. The climbs which we have here in Liège Bastogne Liège, apart from 2 or 3, they're very steep climbs, so it suits a more stronger rider, the likes of Lance Armstrong. Armstrong is not a very good climber, but the climbs which you have when, here in Liège Bastogne Liège, this is why we call them côtes. Côte de Rosière, Côte de la Redoute. We don't call them Col de Rosière. So these kind of coats are ones that riders who are not specifically climbers can get over them.
Well, here we are, this chasing group then, still hammering along here, hoping to cut back on that gap. That was Andrea Perron for Bunyo's team in that group going through then. And the chase is on, but they're going to collect, I would have thought. Here we got one of the Gavis riders in there, Kengialta. They should have collected up Argentin by now, I'd have thought. And that will aid the thing on. But he's not look sort of smart. I'm just wondering what this GBMG team tactics are at the moment.
This is like modern cycling. Like I know that if I was sitting on the back of the group like that, my director would have come along and told me, Stephen, the race is in the front. There's no like nobody wants to finish his teammate to be finishing 15th or 20th down the line, especially when you're GB, one of the main sponsors of the race, finishing outside your own headquarters. So you know, it's not very good tactics on their behalf.
But of course they've seen Argentin come out, so they're thinking, well, it might be one at a time, 10 green bottles falling off the wall, and perhaps somebody else might blow a bit, but they all seem fairly equally matched at the moment, as they take it equal to do a run on the front. Looks like De La Santa going through, then Chiappucci coming on behind him, then Armstrong in the World Champions rainbow jersey, and Rominger and the 2 Gavis Bellon riders behind. Furlan looking back as Berzin moves in behind Rominger, so you can take your pick from that. It's all relaying quite well at the moment. They all seem to be doing an equal amount of work. Nice little tactics here. Chiappucci dropping in. This is what we call the chain gang, by the way. It rolls like a chain, and every racing cyclist is aware of that when he goes out training. And these right, oh, here we are, arm up. That looks like he's got a puncture. Now we'll see how strong he is. And
this is a very, very bad time to puncture, because we're coming down now about 2 kilometers from Côte de la Redoute, which is a very, very steep hill. If you start at Côte de la Redoute with 20 yards behind your front group, even 30 yards behind your front group, it's very, very bad.
Oh, it's a bottly one, too. I was watching his wheels. The cameraman, thankfully, dropped his camera down. See, the cameraman saw his arms go up, dropped the camera down so he could pick up the wheel to see if it was flatted on the front or rear, and it wasn't, thank goodness for that. So Armstrong now with a new bottle. That's what he's after. Has got back in there, so his arm quick was not to say, I've got a mechanical problem, please can I have something to drink.
It's good, better for him, because as I was saying, going into Côte de la Redoute with 10, 20, 30 yards behind, it's very difficult to get it back, or when you do get it back, you must use up so much energy to get it back that when you have you suffer then going over the top of it. But now looking at these riders here now on the screen, I've been trying to analyse them for the last couple of minutes, saying to myself, well, what's going to happen on the Côte de la Redoute? Who can leave who behind, and who can attack it, who can go away? I'm just trying to say, well, Capucci looks very well, he's going very strong. De La Santa looks very well. He's peddling along very, very easily. He's been going well so far all year. Berzin is going very well, Rominger, Armstrong. So between the six of them, I cannot see who's going to leave who behind. So we could actually find ourselves with still six riders in the front going over Côte de l'Aradou, which is in the next 3 or 4 kilometres.
And they've grown the gap now up to 2 minutes. Although, of course, the race, as you were saying earlier to me when we were going across the course, Stephen, has changed somewhat with the finish being that further, the other side of Liège. We've got something like about another, 14 kilometres to do through and out the other side of Liège. So the importance of La Redoute and Des Forges seems to have been watered down by this long run in at the moment. But you're quite right, I presume they will use it to put a bit of pressure on, but it's not what it was when you read the race in your time.
Well, my time, Dave, I only stopped last year.
Well, I know, but you said it was a different, the way you read it coming in.
Yes, it was, because I could, up to 3 years ago, Liège Bastogne Liège finished down in Liège itself. We went over Côte de l'Aradou, we came down immediately over Côte de Forges, and then we went 8 to 10 kilometres down a long, fast hill, down to the finish in Liège. So it meant that all our efforts we could give to going up the last 2 climbs. Whereas now they've moved the finish right through Liège. Whereas when you get to the top of the Côte de Forges now, at the moment, where we had 7-8 kilometres to the finish, now we have 20 kilometres to the finish. Where riders know, well, if I give it everything on a Côte de Forges, I still must go to the finish. So we changes things around, because even though the final is on a hill up to the Côte d'Ans, it's still not nothing like a Côte de l'Aradou or Côte de Forges. And it means that there can always be a bit of a regrouping after the Côte de Forges going through Liège.
Well, that lies ahead of them on this 80th edition of the Liège Bastogne Liège. Covering today 268 kilometres, 25 teams started, 188 riders in all. Whittled down now to see what you see on your screen. These riders here who put the pressure on, the selection taking place as was predicted as they hit the Stocco and then up through Stavelot, and then afterwards the whole race fell into a pattern. That was at some 90 kilometres to go, and here yet more vocal encouragement for Claudio.
Like, I'm sure he's Quintarelli is possibly saying to Capucci, like, don't use too big a gear on the Laradoute, because Capucci is the kind of a guy, when he feels strong, he wants to show everybody how strong he is, and he uses too big of a gear. Whereas I'm sure Quintarelli is kind of trying to remind him, saying, Kappa, don't be too impatient. Keep the gears down low, and watch Rominger, you know.
Claudio Capucci's got a tremendous following back in England and Ireland, I know, Stephen, and I've been watching him all these years, but I was fascinated when he took the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. Up till then, we'd not heard much of him, and that seemed to change him. Was that true? Were you talking to him? Did he suddenly get a new lease of life, a new feeling he could do something?
No, I think what happened was Capucci was always a very good team rider, and in the Tour de France of 88, I think it was, 89, he got the opportunity of getting 10 minutes ahead. And that gave him new confidence. There was no team leader in the Carrera team that year, so automatically he became the team leader. It gave him a lot of responsibility, so he had a big heavy weight on his shoulders, and he had to make do with it. So he lost the Tour de France, that same Tour de France, and a bit stupidly, because he was too immature and got too excited about what was going on, and one day he just kind of gave the race away. He rode too much in the front, and in the final he was attacked and lost it. But since then he's learned a lot. But unfortunately, he hasn't been in the same situation. He's always had time trials against him, and because he's a rider which rides always in the front, he uses up too much energy. And unfortunately, in time trials, he hasn't got what it takes to put a difference between himself and the guys like Indurains or Romingers.
But of course, I mean, a lot of public's heart goes out to somebody like him when he attacked a couple of years ago in the Tour on that great long stage, just romped away and just did it on his own.
It was incredible. It's possibly one of the best moments in cycling in the last decade.
Yeah.
But like Capucci's kind of a rider, like he'd be after a stage, I often shared a room with him and saying, Steve, did you see me today? Did you see me? Did you see me? Wasn't that great? Didn't you see Argentina was on my wheel and I dropped him? Or he's too happy to see this. I said, yes, but what place did you finish in? He said, I finished second. So maybe if you had been a little less foolish with Argentina, maybe you would have won the race. He said, yeah, maybe you're right. But he said he cannot control himself. He's a guy who must show off. He's not a guy, sometimes looking at him and talking to him, like a lot of riders don't like him because they say he's very, very big-headed and ignorant. But he's just a baby, and he's a super champion, where he's only sometimes like a mentality of a 15-year-old.
Well, last night he was the very happy father of the 15-year-old. He sat there, the team had their meal, he was sitting there with his wife and young child Samantha, and they're busy Samantha had her own feeding bottle. There's one of those little teats on top, not one that goes into the frame of this thing here. Look, very happy gathering there with his wife and his little daughter. And Claudia was smiling. It reminded me of the picture which I saw. RTE did a wonderful set of videos running for 8 minutes of some of the rides at the Tour de France last year, when Claudia actually was going home to his dear mother, was cooking large lumps of food for him, and he's smiling today like a little boy. And yesterday he was not the father, but he's still like a little boy who got a little pride. He got a marvellous smile.
Oh, he looked very well yesterday. I think having the baby, or not having the baby, his wife having the baby, has made him much more relaxed now. He's much more responsible, and he gets on with the job. Before, he'd be out going to receptions and everything else, and a time where he would have been training or what have you, he'd be in receptions, whereas having the baby now and in the family has meant that it's quieted him down an awful lot, and it's made him much more responsible.
So Jim Ockowicz having a chat here, because that's his man on the back of the group. Jim Ockowicz, team manager of the Motorola team, been team manager for some time now, shepherded the 711 team as it was for some years, and kept it going. Then it became the Motorola team. Jim driving the car there, very experienced American, bike rider of some renown himself, and he's seen a lot of good Americans come through his squads in recent years, and must be very pleased with his young protege here, who not only is the reigning world champion, but surprised everybody with a cracking stage victory in the Tour de France last year. So Armstrong, the Americans have got a real find in this fellow. He's looking very, very good at the moment. In fact, all these riders in this little breakaway group. The last flash we had on the screen was some 40 kilometres to go. That's 25 miles, so we've got around about an hour, but they are riding into a very, very strong, biting, cold headwind. This particular part of the course is absolutely into the teeth of a wind, which is in fact at about 25 miles an hour. So they've got a very strong wind they're riding into, but you see the flags in the background blowing. It's a very tough part of the course their riders are on now, and I think that's also going to slow down any chasers who might try and get off from the group behind. It really has got to be a concerted effort by groups of riders rather than lone individuals, because the whole run-in, although we zigzag shortly back up into the hills, the last run-in towards Liège and up to Arles, that is into the wind again. So it's not over by any means, because if you just drift off the back of a group like this, the wind gets you, you can be in all sorts of trouble. Don't like the way that Armstrong's easing himself out of the saddle. I wonder if he's getting a bit of backache at the moment.
Well, I think it's possibly also he knows that the Côte de Laurentides is coming up, so he wants to kind of stretch the muscles a little bit in his legs to make himself as fresh as possible. But I've been looking at the screen again. I think that at this moment, Rominger must be possibly the most worried man in this group, because he's looking around him. He said, I have Armstrong here, I have Berzin here beside me, I have Capucci, whereas last year he was the strongest man at the race and he was beaten by Ralph Sorensen, whereas if this goes to the finish, he's going to be at least third, because at best third, I mean, because Lance Armstrong is very, very strong, he's very, very fast, and Berzin is also very fast, so I'm sure now we're going to come to the Côte de Laurentides now in the next couple of kilometres. I'm sure, unfortunately for Rominger, but I think he must make his big move now on the Côte de Laurentides, because Côte de Forge, which comes almost immediately after it, is not as steep, and he may not be able to get rid of riders like Berzin or Armstrong. So if he gets over Laurentides with them, that means he's married to them.
This is the sharp left turn then, and running down alongside the river, another right turn, and then shortly we'll be on this very narrow little climb, which will certainly suit this little group of riders on the narrow roads rather than the big bunch, which is beginning to congeal behind, and is now only 1 minute 32. So in fact, looking across the river, they've come down the main road, they'll be able to look across and see the escapers. So it really is that the dogs now can see the hare on the other side, but they just can't close that gap down. But this climb, as Stephen was saying, could be the vital one. It's steep enough anyway to really test the legs. They turn right and then head up towards this very interesting little climb. Not quite as rough as it used to be either.
Well, the road surface has once again been changed, but the gradient is still stayed the same. So, but the fact of it being very, very narrow, and also the fact of it coming after it has 244 kilometres, or sorry, 229 kilometres, it means that the riders will still have a lot of fatigue in the legs, and but I still feel, and I'm sure they feel the very same thing, that this is where a lot of things are going to happen on this climb, because if they get over this hill, well, more than likely they should come down to the final hill together. But now we're just coming around now. We'll be going under the motorway now in about a kilometre or so, and that's where the hill really starts. It starts off, the riders will be using about a 41 16, and then going from 16 straight to 18, straight to 20, then 21, and then most riders will have, riders like Capucci will possibly have 21, 22, 23. They will not go 21, 23 because at some stages in the hill 22 is good, and there's one little part in the hill where you go 23, so going from 21, 23, 23, 21 is too big of a jump. So they try and make the scale of their block going up from 12 to 21, 22, 23.
And this is the tough part of it now. The camera doesn't always give you the exact steepness of the climb, but this really is a tough one. You can gauge to a large extent the way the riders are out of the saddle, beginning to use their body weight to help them up the climb, and shortly when they turn sharp right it goes on and does even more. Now this, by the way, is a motorway. Now would you see this on the M1 by any chance, or the M25? Actually it's like the M25 most days of the week because they can't get here because of the traffic jam, but this is a motorway. The police car, I'm not quite sure he's got a book everybody, he's going to have a look himself. Yeah.
But if you can imagine the ingredient now on this hill, to give you an indication, the riders here out of the saddle swinging on the bars in 41, 17, 18 now at the moment. So you can imagine like the ingredient at the moment. This is not the steepest part. This is the part where the surface is still very, very good. See Capucci, he's not using 41, 17. He's possibly using the big ring even, but it's not very, very clever really. He should be using a smaller gear.
He's struggling a little bit at the moment.
He does actually look to be struggling a little bit. Yeah, you can never tell with Capucci because he always uses the big gear. Even when he's feeling good, he uses the big gear. But as you can see, Rominger is left to do all the work, and because the other guys know, as I was saying earlier on, they know that this is the place Rominger must make his move. If he doesn't make his move here, well then normally they might go to finish together, but it'd be more difficult for Rominger to get away then. So this is it's in Rominger's. Rominger must get away here. If he doesn't get away here, well, he should not possibly make it very difficult for him to win Liège Bastogne Liège.
Rominger on the front then with Armstrong right behind him. De La Santa just hovering behind them there. And the two Gavist Bellan riders, Berzin in the white cap, the blue cap is Furlan, and the white jersey, Career at the back, Claudio Capucci, who is just a little bit off the pace at the moment, but you never know with him, he might be biding his time. But Rominger is the man doing the damage at the front, and Berzin's beginning to move up through as well. That was the one we were looking for as probably being the nigger of the woodpile today, the chap who might provide a surprise, and already Rominger has just eased back a bit, but Armstrong doing just the right thing. He never seems to take the lead. He's just hovering there behind the specialist climbers.
Oh, he's doing the right thing. We saw earlier on Argentine giving a good burst in the front for his teammate, for Berzina. But now you have in this group, you have Rominger and we also have De La Santas. If I was in Rominger's shoes, I would have made De La Santa right in the front, coming into the hill and then attacked. But it's very difficult for Rominger to ride in the front and then attack.
Yeah.
So we saw the difference between De La Santa and Argentina. Argentina sacrificed his race for Berzin, but De La Santa now, unfortunately, is riding his own race.
So here we are then with Rominger still, who put a lot of power in way back after 90 kilometres were to go, and now we've got less than 40. So he's been in this breakaway group now for over 50 kilometres, and Rominger ploughing his way up this crowd. Again, the Italian flag waving, and the Italians well represented in this breakaway group. And
this hill is actually about 20%, Dave, sorry.
20%?
20%,
yep.
The ingredient.
Now up to 18 now, so it's getting steeper all the way up. You can look back down there at the motorway. We hovered over that with a helicopter. They came underneath that.
Rominger, he's still there, Rominger. I didn't see him there. But
you're a bit worried about him, aren't you?
Well, I like Rominger very much. For me, he's a very, very good rider. And but unfortunately, everybody else knows that too and wants to stay on his wheel. And when you see riders like De La Santa here on the right-hand side of our screen, being a teammate of Rominger, not willing to sacrifice, maybe not sacrifice his race, but at least give Rominger a hand. It's not very, it's modern cycling once again.
Yeah, that's unusual, isn't it? Because De La Santa, he's had quite a good start to the season at the moment too, hasn't he? So he's probably another young rider who seems to think, well, no, perhaps I'll get a chance if I am allowed to play.
But he has definitely got a chance, but at least if he gave Rominger a dig out, and it didn't work out for Rominger, he could still have his own chance later on. But at least all it meant was riding on the front of the group for maybe 200 yards on the start of the hill. But he wasn't prepared to do it. But definitely De La Santa might even win this race at the end. It wouldn't surprise me if he did, because he's a very, very good rider, very good sprinter.
Winner of the Seman Catalan earlier this year, and still Rominger putting the pressure on, so his teammate drifting a bit off the back. De La Santa start the season in fine form, as did Rominger as well. and Kierpucci sitting at the back of this one and still at the front. Rominger putting the pressure on, fighting his way past all the photographers and the cheering crowd. Rominger really is beginning to stretch the legs of the chasers, but he's hardly opened up enough gap to say it's mine, because Berzin is closing it down. De Los Santos moving across on Berzin's wheel, and at the back then Claudio Kierpucci still hasn't been shelled out, so Rominger, that little bit of flurry of activity, has not done what he hoped, I think, to break the legs of the chasers. They're all smoothly coming back up to again. It was a very, very scintillating move. The noise of the crowd urging on the riders. It must be deafening when you get into a climb like this. They shout, the horns blowing in your ears, but nevertheless, Rominger's having another go now. That first one didn't do the job. Now he's really letting fly and looking back to see what damage he's done. De Los Santos not coming through, and Berzin is the one that's got to try and close that one down. Kierpucci still hanging on the back here, and Armstrong likewise. Armstrong's a phenomenal descender, as is Kierpucci. Perhaps they're hoping they can recoup it on the drop down the other side. But the damage being done again by Rominger goes under the Redoute banner there, collecting more points, more money in the King of the Mountains. But they've got him back. He tried hard, and it doesn't seem to go. Berzin looks over his shoulder. I thought for a minute he might counter-attack, but no, that was some ride, and they've got him back.
It was, but I think Tony left it too late, really, because he should have done it on a really steep part. Instead of just going more or less for the Grand Prix of the Mountains, he should have gone a little bit earlier. But then once, as I said earlier on, it's difficult for a rider like Tony to make the tempo on the foot of the hill and still attack. It should have been like De Los Santos should have given him a handout on the first 200 metres of the climb, and then Tony had to go then. But there's still the Côte de Forge left, which are going to take a tackle in about another 4 or 5 miles now.
Well, the climb, every time they went over, the climbs have been 12 and today. The first ride over the top, collecting himself 10,000 Belgian francs, which at 50 to the pound makes it like about £200 a time. But the overall victor in the King of the Mountains will take 100,000 Belgian francs as a prize. That's about £2,000. So Rominger, the till is already ringing as far as he's concerned. And the attacks are coming in. Claudio Kierpucci will be sitting at the back as he decided to have a go now, and Armstrong's gone with him. Well, that looked tactical. We wonder if he got stiff legs, but is he just having a bit of a flurry?
It's a really great performance from Lance Armstrong here in LIEGE Bastogne Liège, because he has definitely got a lot of revenge, because people have said a lot of things about him over the last few weeks. But to see him riding like he's riding today, he's riding not so much to the front, but he's riding a very offensive ride. Like everything that moves, he's always onto it. So you know, it could be he will not be very far away from a win.
For a 21-year-old who supports Dallas Cowboys, comes from Texas, to be riding at this standard with these riders, he's riding very intelligently, isn't he?
He is. He's riding very intelligently. Lance is a very, very good rider, and he's not world champion just by accident either.
Well, I hope, I'm saying that, I don't want to be disrespectful to Texans and Dallas Cowboys supporters. I'm just saying that anybody who's used to that sort of life, coming across here, it's a different ballgame, isn't it?
It is, definitely. Even for anybody coming across here from any nation, whether it be Ireland, England, Texas or Hong Kong, it's a totally different ball game coming across here and riding with professional racing. Also, tactically, it's very difficult. It takes a long time to get to know who's who and what's what, and which way different guys think, different guys feel. So but also Lance, he's being very young. He's very, very clever, very, very cagey. He has a sense of the race. He can feel the race. He can feel who's going well, who's going bad, and which wheel to be on. And we can see in the last couple of races he's ridden, he's very rarely missed out in a good race.
He's also got a useful combination behind, hasn't he? Jim Okovich, an American, obviously can relate to being home country. And then Hedy Kuiper, who's got a very shrewd head too, hasn't he? So that in the team behind him, there's a combination there which must be very useful to him.
Definitely, but naturally he's good, mentally and tactically. So when you have guys like Hedy Kuiper behind you, well, it's a great plus. As you saw, the group behind is now more than 2.5 minutes behind. So I think that the final, the finish of the race is going to be between these riders now. Although there's also a slight chance now in the final, there's definitely room for more attacking, as we'll see later on now. And I'm sure there'll be definitely more attacks, because these riders, they all look around the same level. Like Rominger attacked a few minutes ago, we saw the guys coming back onto him straight away, so it means that nobody's really dead.
A lot of strong legs still in this race. Up front, this the LIEGE Bastogne Liège, Claudio Kierpucci marking Lance Armstrong, obviously playing doggo on the last little climb, and this is the man that started the attack, couldn't get rid of him though. Tony Rominger. I wish I could see Tony Rominger this year in the Tour de France showing that same sort of fire he just showed then, because He's the only rider, well, he's one of the few riders I think that could give Indra a bit of a run for his money. He showed flash of it last year, but of course he's had rather a lot of experience, and he's had a quiet time in the summer with his problem with pollen and asthma, wasn't it? So, but now he seems to be riding all year round and calculating and riding particular events. And I'd just love to think this year we're going to have a much harder Tour de France.
Well, my money is actually on Romain for the Tour de France, because I know Tony very, very well, and I know his method of training and everything else. I met him in Monte Carlo when I was driving in the Monte Carlo Rally in January, and he was going out training. He said, "Stephen, I'll meet you down on the seafront." Met me at the seafront, and it was about 9:10. And I said to him, "How long are you doing, Tony?" He says, "I'm doing it 5 hours." I said, "Yes, well, what time can I see you?" He said, "Oh, I left my house at 9 o'clock. I'm here 10 minutes, that's 5 hours, less 10 minutes. I'll be here, I'll be home at 20 past. He'd calculated that 10 minutes he stopped talking to me was going to be added on to his training. So he calculates everything. He's a very, very shrewd man. He has, I telephoned his wife one night and I said to him, "What's Tony doing?" He was waiting till I go and look at his program. Tony was gone training, she gets his program. He's always doing 6 hours today, so call back at such a time.
Yeah.
Because he goes strictly by a program. His doctor makes a program for him and he sticks to it to the letter.
Well, that's different from the days when I started bike racing. It's all changed so much now, hasn't it? I must say, it's also meeting up with people like Brian Robertson, the first British man to finish in the Tour de France. My good friend Hugh Porter, who actually paid money to listen to yesterday, was introducing this particular program, and some of the great tour riders, Bob Maitland and Alan Ramsbottom, Stan Jones, many of the old Brits went out there to ride for the first time in things like the Tour de France. Harry Reynolds was amongst the crowd as well. Stan Britton, I shall leave out some I know, so please apologies for those, but I must say in those days it wasn't as technical as it is now by any means, but nevertheless you have to have talent, and that man Romick has got a lot of talent undoubtedly. Now he's got the chance of showing it, and of course his high altitude training he does seems to be part of that plan, doesn't it?
Well, the real plan is that Romain takes time for training, and he will fix his objectives as, for example, Paris-Nice, LIEGE Bastogne Liege, and now the Tour of Spain. And he will fix himself this in his mind. He will set a training program with his doctor and with his coach, and he will stick to that training. And he's the kind of guy, if you go training with him, you want to bring money for a phone call or for a taxi, because he just keeps going. He's savage in training. He has a program. Today it's mountain training, today it's power training, today it's speed training, and every day is different kind of training. And this is why mainly the Italian riders over the last, definitely the last 2 years have come on so much. It's because they've gone so much into this training now with Conconi and with Professor Ferrari, and it's definitely paying off. We see we have about nearly 60 wins this year so far by Italians alone.
Of course, Rominger being Swiss, but nevertheless rides for Mappe Class, which is a combination, Mappe being an Italian company that they involved in the cement business and also paints as well. In fact, they painted the surface of the track in Mexico for the record attempt for Mosa, and Class is a milk company from Spain. So these two companies have come together to sponsor part Italian, part Spanish team this year, and this rider here from Switzerland, Rominger, is their #1 man. Riding 11, sitting at the back of this little group at the moment. They seem to be slowing a little bit, but I suppose they can afford that easement with the gap around about 2 or more minutes behind to the chasing group.
They can, of course, but I'm sure some of them are saying to themselves, well, I was hoping there would only be 2 or 3 of us left after this hill. Another guy that's saying, well, I'm happy to be here now, I'll stay here and try and finish in this group. So there's 1 hill left now, which is Côte de Forge, and like when you get over it, you're plain sailing down to Liège, and there's only the last run up into Ans, then, which is the final. But what risks to happen now is the fact that when somebody attacks, everybody might start looking at each other, and who's going to ride?
Well, you were saying earlier, actually, Stephen, that the last climb is not quite as it used to be. We used to go down and over. We've cut out the Horny climb this year. They used to go over that and then back onto the forge, but so it's not quite as hard as it used to be. And what's going through these riders' minds now, when we've still got that 1 climb and then this run down into Liège. So we've got all seem to be equally matched at the moment on this long, again, drag into the wind. Very cold conditions for all these riders, and something like 7 hours in the saddle today. Tony Rominger living in Monte Carlo, and a brief mention there from Stephen of his performance in the Monte Carlo Rally. I'll tell you, in fact, he finished in 57th place, if my news is correct, driving for Seat, and has since been to drive a rally in Ireland, and looking forward to a bit of time behind the steering wheel rather than behind a handlebar. Not unusual, by the way, that bike riders turn to rallying. Jerry Burgess, many years ago, tandem champion of Great Britain. He went on to be a very successful driver in the Ford Zodiac team. They also won the Monte Carlo rally in Jerry's day. So he lives down in Monte Carlo, listens to the Eurosport's program as well. So next time you're down in Monte Carlo, you might as well look up Jerry Burgess, ex-president of the Pickwick Bicycle Club as well. So that's a bit of background for you. All these lads here still together at the moment, looking quite comfortable. Peace reigning at the moment as you see all the cars in the background. They've been dashing backwards and forwards and still can't decide who's going to win this one today. "30 kilometres to go to the finish, and a little group of 6 men here without Argentin, who've been dropped off. The selection started by Tony Rominger after 90 kilometres were left towards the finish, so they've had some 60 kilometres out on their own. The chasing group, just over 2 minutes behind, contains the white jersey of the reigning World Cup leader, Andre Chimil, but none of these riders, yes, in fact, Furlan is his biggest threat. Number 46 in there, Furlan, the biggest threat as far as he is concerned. Chimil, who's got 85 points in the World Cup, and Furlan's got 50. That's right. Furlan's got 50. So as they come in towards the finish here, 50 points for the first, 35 second, 25 for third, 20 points for fourth place as well, 18 for fifth, and 16 for the next rider in. So provided that Furlan can stick his wheel well up in the top 3 here, he can be challenging for the jersey as leader in the tour. He's got to in fact finish in first or second place, Furlan, to take the white jersey off Chimil, and Chimil has got to keep out of the top 12 places. So it's going to be a little bit of a computing game at the end of the finish just to see where the white jersey goes, but I rather think it's highly probable that Chimil may well just keep that white jersey, but you can never tell. If Furlan managed to win this race, they'll give him 100 points, and Chimil would have to collect 15 points, and that means Chimil would have to finish in this little group, which he's not going to do. So that's a bit of background for you.
Well, Furlong is definitely one of the men on form at the moment, apart from Chimil. But I think today Chimil's jersey, his World Cup jersey, has no. He should keep it in all due respect to Furlong. I think Chimil should keep the World Cup jersey. But it's never a bad thing to gain points. So Furlong is, of course, he knows himself that it'll be difficult to get the jersey, but at least if he marks up a couple of points here and a couple of points in the Amstel in a week's time, at the end of the year when the total points are all put together, and because there are other classics later on during the year, like the likes of Paris Tour, the likes of San Sebastian, where Chimil can get points and where Furlong may not get points. So it's all a question of being regular, and it's regularity which gives you at the end of the day a World Championship jersey.
And looking down the World Cup at the moment, the top 10 riders again showing how strong the Italians are. They've got Baldato in there, Bugno in there, Furlan, Ballerini, Cipollini and Baffi in the top 9 places. So 6 out of the top 9 in the World Cup are from Italy, and in fact 10th place equal is Ludwig and Zanini. So it just shows the strength again of Italian cycling, and here the World Cup being dominated by these riders from down on the edge of the Mediterranean.
Talking about Italian cycling, if you forget about the nationality of the riders in this front group, there is only one rider outside an Italian team, which is Motorola, which is Lance Armstrong. The Malpes, the Givis, the Capucci, they're all from Italian teams, and putting it in one way, Armstrong's supposed to be the only foreigner in the group, more ways than one in this group. So it just shows that the Italian cycling at this moment in time is very, very strong. Not only the individuals themselves, like Furlong and Baldato, Cipollini, Fondriest, they're all very good individual riders themselves, and they're also Italian. And the Italian teams themselves have come to the fore, definitely in the last 2 years.
And D'Alessandro taking over, driving hard at the front. Another new, fairly young professional, but doing a good job here at the moment as far as his teammate is concerned, just being psychologically up alongside him, doing all the help he can to keep this thing rolling along. And with the gap now, something around about 2.5 minutes, should be sufficient on these long straight stretches. This big group, this small group, is out of sight, the big chasing group, but the headwind, I think, beginning to wear down the opposition, and so it could be still this little group of 6 men away for the finish yet to come. It's getting a bit dark, but conditions are somewhat brighter in Liège, and a good crowd beginning to congregate at the finish. There's been some local amateur racing in the finishing circuit, the whole of town being brought to a halt as the riders will come through alongside the Meuse and over the river bridge. The Liège is actually at the junction of the Orth and the Meuse, and the World Road Racing Championship was held here way back in 1930 and the track events in 1975. Over 8 times the Tour de France has finished in Liège. Bartali won in 48, then Leone shared, Darigard, Van Looy, Lubedink, and they had a depart here in 1989. There were 2:42. It's growing, in fact, now, 4:40 back to the big chasing group. So I think one might say it's all over bar the shouting, as the riders then with their backs now towards Bastogne, where the people had the stage start of the Tour de France in 1976, but Liège, a much better known town for cycle racing, and this the oldest cycle race on the calendar, started way back in 1892. And the amateurs ran it for the first 3 years as such, but progressively now the professionals have taken over. Independents ran it for a short period, but right now the pros showing us what a great classic grade this is.
It's definitely, in my opinion, one of the 2 biggest classics in the international calendar. You have Milan-San Remo, of course, in Italy, Liège Bastogne Liège, Paris-Roubaix, of course, but I think there are some classics at the moment which are not classics as such, whereas Liège Bastogne Liège, in my estimation, is possibly the classic of the classics, because it's very good for an all-rounder. It's not like Paris-Roubaix where you have to cobblestones. You go well on cobblestones, you're in the front. If you don't go well on cobblestones, you're at the back. Whereas Liège has a circuit where you go up and down all day. It's a very, very long, 260 odd kilometers, and there's a bit in there for everybody really. So it's in my opinion, for me, it's one of the classics of classics.
And started, as with most of the cycle racing events, to publicise a local newspaper called L'Express, and that was the whole reason to have the race all those many years ago. It has had some very great names on the roll call of honour over the years. Merckx, of course, being the one that comes easiest to mind with his 5 successes, but also people like Hino has won this race as well in the past. Argentina, we talked about him. Adi van der Poel, I spoke to him this morning, also a previous winner of this race, and Adi said this race is for specialists. Well, he won it a few years ago, of course now better known for his off-road stuff on cyclocross, and his superb performance last week in the Paris-Roubaix. This great classic then going back over many more years now. In fact, we were trotting along this morning, I mentioned Hino's name there, and I came to the conclusion we've got a nice little chain gang going. There were 3 cars. In the first car just in front of us was Bernard Hinault. The next car was Laurent Fignon, and in my car here driving was Stephen Roche. We had the 3 Tour de France multi-winners, all nose to tail. I thought, I've got to add that lot together. It really was quite a collection of gang of the clown. Oh, this is the lot. It looks like it's gathered a few more riders in there at the moment, but a lot of Italians. Is it Italian benefit today, by any chance?
And the second group is there's already 5 out of 6 in the front group, and then in the second group there's practically all Italians.
Yeah, I think about 3 that weren't Italians.
No, it's as I was saying earlier on, the Italian method now over the last 2 years has been more emphasised on training with Conconi and with Dr. Ferrari in Italy. And each rider has his own training program. He communicates by computer to Dr. Ferrari, so it's much of a computer game, but it's paying.
And you saw then the points in the World Cup, and Furlan is in this breakaway group, and the leader Chimil is in that group, some 2.5 minutes behind, trying to chase them down to keep his white jersey on his shoulders. So quite a number of points at stake with this little group at the front on the faster part of the course. Now they must really know that providing they keep this thing rolling, that back group aren't going to cause much trouble, as they're just to bring back for more information. Hello.
Well, there's a bit of unhappiness now between them, as you can see. They're going to the front and pulling over very quickly. So they're in a way they're lucky that the group behind them is so far behind, because they cannot. Now they're making the most of the 2 minutes they have in hand. And they know also they're coming out to the Côte de Forge, as you see Capucci just turning around to ask politely, I'm sure, De La Santa to come past him. And I'm sure they're all hoping now that Côte d'Or, which is coming up now in about the next 2 or 3 miles, that they all stay together, because I'm sure nobody wants to get left behind at this stage. But for me, once again, Tony Rominger is possibly the strongest of the day. But as we get towards the finish in Liège, definitely one of my favourites must be at this moment Lance Armstrong. Furlong's a very good sprinter. De La Santa is not a bad sprinter. Berzin is not a bad sprinter also. But if it comes to right down to a pure sprint, going on what we've seen from Lance Armstrong here over the last 2 climbs, he definitely has it in him to be a possible winner. Who I think before the race nobody would have thought of him because of the race being so hard.
It's 15 miles, in fact, in English language, the distance they've still got to go towards the finish, and that one climb, classified climb, before we find ourselves running in towards the finishing climb as such. And little bit of flurry here at the moment. Psychologically, Claudio Chiappucci, who seemed on the last climb to sit at the back as tail end Charlie and not doing. Now he's recovered. May well have gone through one of those patches most bike riders go through when you have a bit of a, I won't say you die, but you begin to struggle a little bit, then suddenly back it all comes, and so it's Furlan that's gone on the back. Armstrong's still playing that waiting game, does a bit on the front, drops back again.
Look, Chiappucci could be playing a bluff also, because he knows if he lets Rominger go on the front, maybe he might accelerate too fast and might get blown out maybe. Whereas, as you can see here, he possibly is, because he's cutting off the inside, cutting off De La Santa. He's afraid that somebody else take up the relay and maybe ride a tempo faster, too fast to suit him. So it's in his own interest that he's riding on the front, because at least he makes his own tempo. And actually normally there should be a headwind here also, so the lads sitting on his wheel, when they put the nose out to come past him, they get the wind in the face, so they say, oh, there's too much wind here, I'll stay here. And gives Chiappucci time then to get near to the top, and Chiappucci gets as close as he can to the top, and without being dropped, without being in difficulty, he's guaranteed then to get to Liège.
Furlan bringing up the tail end of this little group, and still Chiappucci ploughing away at the front. All look so equally matched, and no sign of weakness yet a while.
They do, but now everybody knows, like in previous years, this was the last hill. We dropped over this hill and dropped down to the finish in Liège. Whereas now the lads know that after this hill, there's still 10 kilometres through Liège and then up the final hill. So everybody must keep a little bit under the pedal. But before, like a couple of years ago, when this hill was the final hill, we gave it everything, and there was bodies everywhere. And there was really a terrific battle on this hill. So, but the circuits have
What's
changed.
emotion like then when you went over with Crickley on that time and you were away? You know, then you could smell the finish. What did it feel like?
Oh, you know, you had eliminated everybody. There was 220 riders in the start, and here you are with 5 miles to go, and you're in the front, and normally not guaranteed to win, but guaranteed to be first or second. And all of a sudden, then you're motivated. You're living on cloud 9, and you're showing. You're feeling really good. You're showing off to Crickley and saying, "Well, I'm going to show you now in the finish. I'm going to beat you." But unfortunately, we didn't count on Argentina coming back from behind, and they were beaten with 200 metres to the finish.
And this crowd has seen it all before. They turn up year in, year out and cheer these giants to the road, battling over the Ardennes forest and heading back into Liège. There is again this year a competition for the victor of the 2 sections, because they're being allocated points in both the Flèche-Wallonne and the Liège Bastogne Liège for the trophy of the weekend of Ardennes. So that's another trophy up for grabs as far as these riders are concerned. And then the Amstel Gold the following weekend, and then it's off to the Tours. And Armstrong's putting the pressure on. This is just the sort of thing he did in the World Championships when it was absolutely pouring down with rain in Oslo, and toward the top end of the climb he just took off, opened up a gap, and they never saw him again. That was a lot longer to the finish, not a great deal, but it's a bit longer to finish than it was in Oslo, and I think these riders here aren't going to let him get out of sight like they did in the World Championship. I don't think anybody thought he could stay away, but he did it that time, and now he's put the pressure on the front, but so far not dislodged anybody. Furlan has not moved off the tail of this group now for some time.
No, it definitely has not, but if we go back to Armstrong a minute ago, as he was going past Chiappucci, gave him a nod to say come along, because I think Armstrong felt that the group with the speed was dying down a little bit, so he wanted to get regenerate the movement again. But definitely Furlong, he's looking very, very comfortable, but also they're all looking comfortable. If you look at Berzini looking comfortable, look at De La Santa looking comfortable. So the problem
they're all kind of like stink as well, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all bluffing or they're all very strong. But at the moment they're coming over the Côte de Forge. Now they have a 4 or 5 kilometre drop down to Liège. They go through Liège and then start the final.
They've just gone past the right-hand side. That's the Stanocker's Memorial, by the way. I hope the cameras have gone up. They didn't do so. He won the Liege Bastogne Liege in 1955. He's world champion that year. Was killed in an accident during a track meeting, and they put a great big statue up there. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I hope we're going to get the picture on it, because he was a great character and great disappointment when he was killed like that. But so that's what they come over the top of.
As we saw in Liège Bastogne Liège this morning, as we're going around the routing, there are so many memorials and so many statues on the road. Surely it's part of modern art, and I don't know why the cameras don't focus in, because having a monument of Eddie Merckx is interesting to the general public. And I'm sure a lot of people would have liked to have seen it who have not got the opportunity to come here to Liège to see it. But unfortunately, the Belgian cameramen have not been able to get the pictures.
Sean Kelly has a square named after him in Carrick-on-Suir. Has anybody in Dublin named anything after you yet?
No, you have to be important. you have to be important in Dublin.
Come on, apart from Merckx, any man who's won the Tour of Italy, Tour of France, the World Championship all in 1 year, that's important.
Well, hopefully somebody from the Irish Republic will be listening and maybe take you up on it.
At least Conal Carr in the pub in Paris will buy you a drink from his pub. Well, there we go, these riders here. We're joking, laughing here. It's no laughing matter out there. They're into the final throws this race. They're over the last, what is an actual classified climb. This big drag we've got to the finish at all is yet ahead of them. And a very tricky run in to Liège, and the gap is growing all the time. So that surge up the climb has really said goodbye to the chasers. They never close, I should never say never, because these things do happen, but 3 minutes and 10 seconds with less than 20 kilometres to go, some 12 miles to finish. That looks impossible right now, and you can perm any 1 from 6 here.
If you remember that in 87, going back to 87 again, myself and Quickly are 2 minutes up on Argentine going over this hill, and yet with 500 metres to go, Argentine came back. So, but here there's 6 riders together, so normally this should not happen.
But you were doing so, you were riding each other, weren't you?
Well, we were riding, but we were bluffing. I'm stronger than you, you're stronger than me, and all of a sudden an Argentine came back from nowhere. Like, but it happens is when you're getting near the finish, nobody wants to be second, so you're easing up all the time, and you don't really realise how slow you're actually going, which can happen to these guys, because the guys behind it, they see they're getting back time, they're going to be having the incentive to ride harder. But the guys in front, they'd be kind of slowing down, because they say, well, if I ride too hard now, I'm going to be beaten. So, you know, I just said to yourself, never say never, because they can come back, although it's highly unlikely, they still can come back.
And that example also, never think you've won the race until you've actually got over the line, nearly happened to Bunyo in the Tour of Flanders a couple of weeks ago, when he threw his bike at the line, arms up in the air, the victor's salute, and Museau nearly picked him on the line. There was no more than about a tire's width in it as Museau came thundering up to him as well. So you've always got to keep going right to the very end. And of this little group here, who's going to win the 80th Liège Bastogne Liège? 6 men in there. You can take your own choice. I know that many of the viewers have likings and dislikings of certain riders, and from our commentary, I hope we put in the picture so you might like to take sides, and when it comes to the finishing sprint, urge on your man. But there is that long drag and chopping and changing, as whether we're going to see all 6 get in, I don't know. I think he could be thinned down yet a while, but Furlan, yes, has been doing a bit of work, but he's certainly not been the most active of this little lot so far. Definitely
not, but what can happen now is you might get somebody might attack, for example, and everyone looks at each other and says, well, who's going to ride? Yeah. And then it could be like they've ridden a fantastic race so far, a very tactical race, whereas everything can be thrown away in the last hill, last climb up to Ans.
Yeah, because there's some wide roads coming into it, and one can get jumping on one side, jump on the other, let him go, I won't chase, and these tactics we've seen happen before, haven't we?
Definitely, especially when you have a headwind, like when you have a group or you have a guy going 50 yards ahead and you have to close the gap. It's very difficult to close the gap, so you'll always, of course, wait for somebody else to close the gap. So you can have some stupid breaks going away towards the end. Well,
one man's certainly got to be watching. Just watching him pull off the front there. Lance Armstrong burst upon the scene in no uncertain terms. I mean, imagine that he goes and finishes last in the San Sebastian Classic and grovels around in that one, then still gets on his bike. And he thought he was going home, and he ends up being a world champion. Not only won the Championship of Zurich as well the year before last. That was an absolute surprise too, just showing a sheer turn of speed coming in to the finish and getting away from the rest of them. So he's got that ability. An ex-triathlete, by the way, if you've not followed his career in the past, he was a short course American champion. That's when they swim for 1,500 meters, then have to ride a bike for 25 miles and come back and then run for 10 kilometers. That's a tough man's sport, believe you me, and that's the way that that fellow Armstrong got into cycle sport. He was a triathlete and found he was very good on the bike riding, and that's why he's a rather chunky looking fellow. He's got quite a lot of weight about him, big shoulders too, being an extremely good swimmer. A bit heavy for the running side, but he's got that enormous strength, and now he's putting it all into cycling. And he's getting one of those with a very slow heartbeat, amazing recovery patterns as well, and so he's probably a little bit different in physique to the rest of these riders. They all seem to be fairly slight little chaps, but he's much chunkier than the rest of them.
But definitely has the upper part of the body is definitely developed, because from running and from swimming, I know that myself personally, when I swam in the winter or when I ran in the winter, I always had great condition starting the season, and it's definitely a big help, because a cyclist needs a very, very strong heart and a very slow heart and big lungs. So I'm sure like Lance Armstrong, where he's lacking something in the legs, he has it on top. So it's a great combination. The legs can be worked upon now. So I'm sure he's working out himself every winter.
But he's quite rotund, isn't he, compared with other chaps? He's got sort of thin arms and their little bodies, but he's quite rotund, isn't he, compared with the rest of them?
He's really much so a bust. Like riders are normally well proportioned, their top and body. Normally they're fairly uniform together. Whereas it's true, Lance has actually got normal legs and an athlete's body, like.
Yeah.
So, but he gets it together now, and I think he has definitely got guts. And as you were saying earlier on, about him finishing last in San Sebastian. That's by no means like some people say, well, I'm a good rider, rather than finishing last, I'll climb off. Whereas the fact that he actually finishes races even when he is last, like I did it myself, and most top riders go through bad patches which nobody knows about, and to get to the top, and the only guys that can suffer going through the bad moments, when they eventually get a good moment, they can make the most of it.
Yeah, that's the problem when we cover on television. We're seeing all this glory up the front, aren't we? And way back, of all those 188 starters, there's 180 behind there, have all got a story to tell right now and ride themselves into the ground, and we don't see them and the suffering some of them are going through, and some cracking riders, which we haven't seen all day, who missed that early break when, just let me put you in the picture, if you've only joined us just now, going towards the back of Liège Bastogne Liège, this is the 4th round of the World Cup, that we had a breakaway off the first climb of the day, some 5 kilometres out, and Francis Moreau, the GAN rider, went into the lead with Carotto and Torres Rezzi. They were chased down for a bit by Martin Den Bakker, and they went right the way down to what we call the turn at the far end at Bastogne, and there they had a lead of something like 15 minutes. It had grown all day long, and as they turned and came back in towards the finish, that lead was whittled away slowly but surely, and then with something like about 90 kilometres to go, the whole race erupted, and they were brought back into the fold, so their efforts were to no avail. And this little group you're looking at now got away under the pressure of Tony Rominger, who was in the middle of the group at the moment. So there's an update on this race, which started just on 10 o'clock this morning. That's Central European time. We're coming up towards, 10 to 5 now. So the riders shortly will have been racing just on some 7 hours of action. So he's sitting there at home watching this one, making himself a cup of tea. Just think about 7 hours in the saddle and something around about 25 miles an hour. Bitterly cold wind, and over some cracking mountain climbs. We've seen some really tough rides today, and we haven't always been able to show you on the camera just how steep the climbs have been, but it really has been a wearing down day. And here we have the top 6 heading in towards the finish at Liège.
They're actually 13 kilometres now from the finish, but just to put you in the picture, and this 13 kilometres is about 3 kilometres now going downhill. There's 3-4 kilometres, 5 kilometres going through Liège, going through the buildings of Liège to get across to the far side for the final 5 kilometres going uphill up to the Côte de Anse. The Côte de Anse is a fairly progressive hill with a 1 kilometre circuit on the top, which is relatively flat to the finish. Capucci now is getting more team orders from Sandro Quintarelli, and I'm sure he's not saying much more than he did earlier on. And he's probably just saying to him, well, watch out for, instead of before watching out for Tommy Rominger on the Laura Dute hill, he's supposed to be saying to him, watch out now for Lance, or at the same time he's supposed to be saying to him, be careful, because everybody's watching Lance Armstrong. Be careful that a small group doesn't go away or somebody attacks and you're not with it, because everybody in this group now know that on the Laura Dute Rominger was dangerous, whereas now if we go to the finish now, more than likely the Lance Armstrong could win. So everybody knows that if you bring Lance Armstrong to the finish, you're going to be second. So if somebody else goes, well, who's going to go after him? So this is the problem there. Nobody wants to miss their part of the cake.
Well, let's hope people at home can sit around and watch this one as well, because we're as fascinated as you are as who is going to win that. My co-commentator here today, Stephen Roche, who was in this race in 85 in third place, 87 in second, something like 9 times he rode the race. Other English-speaking supporters of the Liège Bastogne Liège: Sean Kelly, first in 84 and 89, Robert Miller, third in 1988, and Barry Hoban, third in 1969. I had a chat with Barry Hoban yesterday. Of course, I mentioned the Tour de France riders, admitted to roll Barry into that one with either 7 or 8 stage victories in the Tour. My apologies, Barry. And he reminded me that he did in fact ride 13 of the Paris-Roubaix as well, finished in 9 of them. And of course our best finisher way back in 72. So here the English-speaking rider that missed this a lot is American Lance Armstrong, and the rest of them are very much Italian orientated, although the Rominger comes, I think, just north of Italy, but no doubt will be able to converse fluently in Italian. So poor Lance is the oddball out here, isn't he?
Actually, Rominger actually speaks about 5 languages. He speaks German, Swiss, French, Italian, English, Danish, would you believe? And 6 languages. So he's very, very good. Capucci is having a go now. You can see he's the first not having a go, but it's on a descent. It's a very, very tricky descent also going down and now into Liège with some very, very twisty corners. Normally before, when the guy got away on the top of Côte de Forge, he descended down to the finish. If he had 15 seconds on the top of Côte de Forge, he had 10 seconds at the finish. But there was no way of getting them back. Whereas now we go down into Liège. We're actually coming down to the suburb of Liège now at the moment. Then we must traverse the whole of Liège, which is about 5 kilometers through the buildings of Liège, through to the foot of called the Côte de Anse to the finishing coat. So it's not over yet. You can see that everybody is trying to relax the legs and trying to rest themselves up for the final battle of the day, because in reality that's what it is. They're going to arrive 6 of them on this hill, and they all have their chance at this very particular moment. And I think we have to be able to assist some kind of a battle now going up, because otherwise it's Lance Armstrong is going to win with hands down.
What a turn-up that'll be for the books. He got himself the Championship of Zurich a couple of years ago, collected the stage victory in the Tour de France last year and the World Championship jersey, now in with a shout for this great classic, the Liège Bastogne Liège. That's Lance Armstrong in the rainbow jersey at the back as the champion of the world. Running up alongside the rivers here, the 2 rivers join at Liège. It's the Loth and the Meuse, both join at this particular point. They're down now on the flat. We started here this morning, just down the road from where we are at this particular point. They've been racing now, just coming up towards 7 hours since the start proper this morning. And they've got that drag ahead, and they're still riding into this naggingly cold headwind. As you can see, as that young lady's grasped her arms around her boyfriend and standing against a tree to keep out of the biting cold wind. Spectators been out all day. Very great, knowledgeable number of spectators, the Belgians, who follow this sport. Tremendous following the sport. They know the riders, the traditions and the histories of this race, and cycle racing so strong in Belgium. Saw them all out today on their bikes, going zigzagging across the course to watch the racing. And now glued to their television sets at home, many people trying to sort out themselves who's going to get this one. But a great Belgian classic, but no Belgian in this one. The best placed Belgian, Moseo, is in the chasing group, some 2.5 minutes back behind. And in fact, no, my mistake, he's now nearly 4 minutes. That really says goodbye to anybody catching up with him. 4 minutes and just some 10 kilometres left to go.
Normally this part of Liège was the final. The finish was about another 500 metres up the road here. So you can imagine, you can understand what I was saying earlier on, the fact of getting away on Côte de Forge, coming down into the Liège and finishing. Now the guys still have 10 more kilometres to go, so you can imagine that the guys don't give 100% now going up over the Côte de Forge. To keep a little left for the Côte d'Anse. I
don't remember if Armstrong actually, I think I throw away my start list from last year, as well. Lance rode this race last year. Rominger obviously knows the finish, and for those who've been out on the course, finding a way into the finish would be rather tricky, I think, because he comes zigzagging through the town. But it's a finish which I think the more you know about, the better it would be, isn't it?
It is, because you looking at the programme, you see it goes up and finishes. Whereas, as I showed you earlier on, Dave, you go up the hill and then you go around the houses for 1.5 kilometres back to the finish. You're going up the hill, you see the finish line and say, oh, we're coming to the finish. and all of a sudden you get to 100 metres before the line, you go off right, round the houses and back up to the finish again. So it's you must know to finish it, otherwise it's very, very deceiving, and if you make a bags of it, then you're really in trouble.
And these are the 6 riders in contention then, just under 10 kilometres to go. Around about, 11 minutes of racing, or thereabouts, 11.5 minutes of racing for these riders in this classic. So they will be actually racing for something around about 7 hours and 7:10, 7:15 will be the time scale as far as they're concerned. And very welcome showers, chance to have a bath and rest and go back to the hotels before the Flesh Ballon on Wednesday. It really has, as far as these riders are concerned, difficult to try and dislodge each other, and right now psychologically they must be getting themselves absolutely worked up because that last climb will suit the climbers, and at this particular stage nobody seems to want to throw down the gauntlet, and I suspect it's going to take the turns in and out of the town further on. This is the straight flat part. They start zigzagging shortly left and right, and that may give somebody a chance to try to do something about it, but well, Furlan at the back hasn't been doing much work at the moment. He's still sitting on the back of this group. They're heading in towards the finish. 6 men still in the lead. Less than 10 kilometres to go to the finish, and the riders running alongside by the river, and then they've got to go some very cobble stuff yet to come. The traffic on the far side there just being allowed to use one side of the dual carriageway. This one completely shut down, the whole of this part of Liège now having its own little traffic jam as the race works its way through. Superb work again by the police today. They're up front, stopping all the traffic from getting in the way of the race, rolling closed as far as the roads are concerned. And here we are across the Meuse and over some rather rough cobbles just ahead of them. You'll see the lovely bridge just there with the statues to welcome them, and then they've now got their backs towards the major part of the town, and we're heading up in the distance. You can see that big climb in front of them. That's the one towards the finish. Something like about 8 kilometres yet to go as we cross the Meuse. The wind whipping up the waves on the top of this turbulent water, the rain that we've had, the snow in recent weeks, still chucking down a lot of water from the mountains. But these riders here now concentrating. They mustn't let anything slip. This really is going to be a war of nerves on the way up towards the finish. Not a sign of anybody breaking at the moment, either their nerve or trying to get away from the rest of the field. So if we get the chasers, they're now something around about over 3 minutes in arrears, and it's down to these 6 riders in the group. Then let me remind you that we have 2 riders from the Mappé class team, that is De La Santa and Rominger. 2 riders from the Ballon Gewis team, that's Berzin and Furlan, 42 and 46. 1 rider on his own here, Armstrong, the world champion for Motorola. Claudio Chiappucci for Carrera in the white jersey just in front of him. Rominger, number 11 there, is the man who started this action to split the field. He has De La Santa with him as well. So 2 men from the Mappé class team, 2 men from the Gewis Ballon team, and the Lone Rangers are Chiappucci and Armstrong.
You can see like they're just the riders that are on this break are not nobodies either. Like Rominger has an incredible winning list behind him. De La Santa also. Berzin is arriving. He's the hope of tomorrow. Armstrong, world champion. It's a very kind of selective group we have here at the moment. And they all know here now coming through Liège. There's going to be a lot of twists and turns now, some cobblestones, and before starting up the final hill.
Those 3 at the front are the more up-and-coming ones in youth terms, aren't they? Berzin 23, Armstrong, 22. De La Santa, I think he's quite young too. The front 3 there, the back 3 are more mature and somewhat, more seasoned veterans, aren't they?
Definitely, you can see that also from the way that they're riding. They're taking some risks here and there also. But the likes of Rominger is about 33, Chiappucci's 32, De La Santa's about 26, Furlong's 26, 27, actually Furlong's 28 actually. Lance Armstrong was 22. So there's a bit of both worlds in there in the final of Liège Bastogne Liège now.
Sorry about the picture break-up from time to time, but stay with us. We've not long to go towards the end of the LIEGE Bastogne Liège. It's the 80th race in the season, the race called La Doyenne, which was started the race down to Bastogne and back again by the Peasant Club of Liège, and the officials used to jump on the train to go down to Bastogne to turn the riders back in towards Liège, and it is by far and away the oldest classic in the book. Some 15 years before Milan-San Remo was held, this race was held, and the list of riders that have got it is absolutely like a who's who in cycle racing. Last year, Tony Romigo, who's in this breakaway group at the moment, was pipped at the post by Ralph Sorensen. Sorensen not racing in this race this year, having had an accident and has been sidelined. So that's the last results in 1993. So the year before that, we had people like De Wolf going